The New Girl from the Fear Street series by R.L. Stine. Chapter 1. When Corey Brooks saw the new girl for the first time, he was standing on his head in the lunchroom. Actually, he was standing on his head and one hand while balancing a full lunch tray in his free hand, his black Converse high tops reaching straight up to where his head would normally be. A few seconds earlier, David Metcalf, Corey's best friend and fellow daredevil from the Shadyside High Gymnastics team, had suggested that Corey couldn't perform this feat. "That's too easy, man," Corey had said, shaking his head. Corey never passed up an opportunity to prove David wrong. He hesitated for only a second, running his hand back through his curly black hair and looking across the large crowded room to make sure no teachers were watching. Then he flipped over in midair, landed, and balanced on his head and hand without even tilting the loaded tray. And now David was applauding and whistling his approval from the nearby table, along with several other laughing, cheering spectators. "Now do it, no hands," David called. "Yeah, do it," Arnie Tobin, another gymnastics team pal, urged. "Do it with no head," another joker yelled. Everyone laughed. Corey, meanwhile, was beginning to feel a little uncomfortable. The blood was rushing up to his head. He felt a little dizzy, and the top of his head began to ache from pressing against the hard tile floor. "I dare you to eat your lunch like that," David called, always challenging Corey on the greater glories. "What's for dessert? Upside-down cake?" a girl yelled from near the windows. Several kids groaned and hissed their disapproval of this bad joke. "Corey, looking good," someone shouted. "What is going on?" called an alarmed voice, the voice of a teacher. The jokes, the loud voices, the cheers, and laughter all seemed to fade when the new girl floated into Corey's view. She was so pale, so blonde, so light, so beautiful. At first he thought he was imagining her. All the blood rushing to his head must be causing him to see things. She was walking against the far wall, heading quickly to the double doorways. Corey could only get a glimpse of her, upside down. She stopped to stare at him. He saw pale blue eyes. His eyes connected with hers. Did she know he was staring back at her? Was she smiling or frowning? It was impossible to tell from his position. Then she shook her blonde head, as if purposefully breaking the connection, and vanished from his view. Those eyes. Who is she? Corey thought. She's incredible. Thinking about the new girl, he forgot to concentrate on the delicate balance that was keeping him upright. The tray fell first. Then Corey fell, his face sliding messily into his food, his chest hitting the floor hard, his long legs sprawling behind him. The room erupted in laughter and sarcastic applause. "Do it again!" Arnie Tobin's voice boomed. Arnie could outshout any crowd. David hurried over to help Corey up. "Any more bright ideas?" Corey groaned, pulling spaghetti and tomato sauce out of his hair. "Next time, just get a sandwich," David said, laughing. He had carrot-colored hair and freckles almost as orange, and he had a whooping, high-pitched laugh that could make dogs perk up their ears for miles around. Corey furrowed his t-shirt to wipe spaghetti sauce from his face. When he looked up, Mrs. McReady, the lunchroom monitor, was in front of him. She didn't say anything. She just shook her head. "Sorry about that," Corey said, feeling more than a little foolish. "About what?" Miss McReady asked, keeping a straight face. Corey laughed. Thank goodness Miss McReady had a good sense of humor. "It was all Arnie's idea," David told her, pointing back to the table where Arnie was busy shoving pretzel sticks into his mouth 3 at a time. "I don't think Arnie's ever had an idea," Miss McReady said, still a straight face. Then she gave Corey a quick wink and walked away. Still dripping with noodles and tomato sauce, Corey began to pick up his tray. "Hey, David, who was that girl?" "What girl?" "The blonde girl, the one who walked out while—" "Who?" David seemed confused. He picked up Corey's scattered silverware and tossed it onto the tray. "A new girl?" Corey groaned. "Didn't you see her?" "No, I was watching you making a total dork of yourself." "Me? It was your idea." "It wasn't my idea to do a face dive to a plate of spaghetti." "She's blonde, and she was wearing a pale blue dress." "Who?" "The girl I saw." "You saw a girl wearing a dress to school? You don't believe me, huh?" Corey looked to the doorway as if she might still be there, but then his stomach growled, and he remembered he just ruined his lunch. "Hey, David, you got any money? I'm starving." Don't look at me, man, David said, grinning and backing away. Come on, you owe me. Corey put the tray down on the empty table and started to come after him. No way, man. Where's your lunch? We'll split it. Corey changed direction and headed toward David's table. My lunch? Forget it. I haven't. Corey took the apple off David's tray, then grabbed a handful of present sticks from Arnie's. Hey, I need those, Arnie protested, making a futile swipe to get them back. Be a pal, Corey said through a mouthful of apple. We got practice after school, right? If I don't eat, I'll be too weak to climb onto the balance beam. Break my heart, Arnie said as he broke off the pretzels in Corey's hand and shoved the halves quickly into his own mouth. Maybe the rest of us will still have a chance. Corey detected more than a little resentment from Arnie. He felt bad about that, but what could he do? He couldn't help it if he was a more talented gymnast than his teammates. He had been the varsity gymnastics team since his freshman year at Shadyside, and Coach Warner really thought he had a chance of making the All-State Championships the following spring. It's a good thing Coach Warner didn't see me fall into my lunch, Corey thought. He finished off the last of Arnie's pretzel sticks and slurped up the last few drops of David's chocolate milk, then crushed a cardboard container in his hand. A well-balanced lunch, he said, hiccuping. Arnie was busy showing David a new way to swipe 7-5. He had a serious look on his normally grinning face, and he was swiping David's hand again and again, trying to get it just right. Not like that, jerk, he kept saying. Corey couldn't figure out who was the jerk. Later, he told them, tossing the crushed milk container into a trash basket halfway across the room. They didn't look up. He headed toward the double doors, ignoring some kids who were laughing about his stained shirt and the congealed tomato sauce in his hair. Hey, Corey, think fast! Someone threw a milk carton at him. It bounced off the table and hit the floor. He didn't turn around. He was thinking about the girl in the blue dress again. He had seen her for only a few seconds upside down, but he knew she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Hauntingly beautiful. The phrase popped into his head. He realized he was looking for her as he headed down the hall to his locker. Where is she? Who is she? I didn't imagine her, did I? Hey, Corey, you swimming your lunch? He didn't turn around to see who that was. He realized he must look pretty bad. Suddenly he hoped he wouldn't run into the girl now. He didn't want her to see him with tomato sauce in his hair and all over his shirt. He stood in front of his locker, trying to decide what to do. Was there time to head down to the showers? He looked at his watch. No. The bell for fifth period would ring in less than 2 minutes. Maybe he could cut English. No. Mr. Heston was explaining the term paper assignment today. Lisa Bloom walked up and began turning the combination lock to open her locker. She pulled the lock open and looked at him. You look great. Thanks. He looked down at his shirt. This remind you of when we were little kids? No. You were neater then. She laughed. Corey and Lisa had lived next door to each other in the North Hill section of town for their entire lives. They had played together since they were toddlers. Their two families were so close they were like one big family. Living so close together, Corey and Lisa had managed to stay friends even though those years when boys only played with boys and girls only played with girls. Now as teenagers, they knew each other so well, they were so comfortable with each other, their friendship seemed a natural part of life. Lisa had long black hair that rumbled and curls down to her shoulders, and dark lipstick lips that curled into a half smile whenever she said something funny, which was often. A lot of kids said she looked like Cher. Lisa pretended not to be flattered by the comparison, but she was secretly pleased. Now she stared at Corey in front of the lockers. I was sitting on my head in the lunchroom, he told her as if that fully explained his appearance. Not again, she said. She bent down to pick up some books from the floor of the locker. Who were you showing off for this time? Her question annoyed him. I didn't say I was showing off. I just said I was sitting on my head. David dared you to, right? How'd you know? Lucky guess. She stood up, her arms filled with texts and notebooks. You can't go into class like that. You smell like a pizza. What can I do? Here, you can borrow a t-shirt. She bent down again to rummage in the cluttered locker. A girl's shirt? I can't wear a girl's shirt. He grabbed the sleeve of her sweater and started to pull her up. She pulled out of his grasp. It's not a girl's shirt. It's from the Gap. It's for girls or boys. You know, it's just a shirt. She pulled the black and white striped t-shirt out and tossed it up to him. But wash your hair before you put it on. The warning bell rang. The locker door slammed. The hall grew quiet as kids disappeared into their fifth period class. Get real. How can I wash my hair? She pointed to the water fountain across the hall. He smiled at her gratefully. You're smart, Lisa. I always thought you were smart. That's a real compliment coming from a guy who puts his head into spaghetti, she said, her mouth sliding into that familiar white half smile. Hold the water on for me, he said, walking quickly to the low white fountain. He looked down the hall to make sure no one was watching. The hall was nearly deserted. No way, Corey. I don't want to be late. She followed him anyway. And I certainly don't want to be seen with you. You're a pal, Lisa. He didn't see her frown. She hated that word. She hated to be a pal. She sighed and turned the water knob. Then she stood there hoping that no one would come by as he plunged his head into the fountain and frantically struggled to scrub the dry sauce from his tangled curls. The bell rang. She let go of the curtain. Corey, I've got to go. He stood up, water pouring down his face. Good thing the water in the fountain never gets cold, he said. He pulled off the stained t-shirt and dried his hair with it. Corey, really, I don't want to be late. She tossed the clean t-shirt at him and, struggling to hold on to her armload of books, ran to class. The striped shirt fell onto the floor in front of Corey's sneakers. Still rubbing his hair dry with the dirty shirt, he bent over to pick it up. When he stood up, he saw her again. First, he saw her blue dress. Then he saw her blonde hair. She was halfway down the hall, hurrying to class. There was something strange about the way she moved. Her feet didn't make a sound as she ran. She was so light she seemed to be floating a few inches above the ground. Hey, wait! He called to her. She heard him. She stopped and turned her head, her blonde hair swirling behind her. Once again, her blue eyes connected with his. What was that in her eyes? Was it fear? Her lips moved. She was saying something to him, but he couldn't hear her. Please, don't. Is that what she had said? No, that wasn't it. That couldn't be it. Corey was a terrible lip reader. Please, don't. No. What has she really said? Why does she look so frightened? Please, wait, he called. But she vanished into a classroom.